Hi, I'm Christian Barman, I'm the car enthusiast, and today I want to show you how to install a Phoenix Racing charge pipe on your N55 and the E9X generation, E93, E93. It should be fairly straightforward. It's much easier than doing it on the F30 generation because this is on the side of the engine and you have to just move a couple things out of the way, whereas on the later generation you have to kind of remove some under trays and it's just a process. But in this case, it should be fairly straightforward. And what's the whole point of a charge pipe? The whole point is to get air flowing as smoothly as possible in your intake system. So for the same reason that you might increase airflow by getting another intake, which I'm doing right after this, so stay tuned for another video if you're interested in that. You want to make the air flow as smoothly as possible and uninterrupted. And so the actual stock charge pipe, as you can see here, has a lot of bends in the plastic and some weird kind of nuances that keep the air from moving as smoothly as possible. And this eliminates that, and it just makes air flow quite smooth. It's totally smooth in the inside. This is aluminum rather than plastic. And this may or may not increase horsepower, but the whole thing is you want your engine to run as efficiently as possible so that if it is making more power than stock, that's going to be a little bit more accessible. So let's get started. Alright, so before we get started, let's take a look at what we're actually replacing, right? So this is the old charge pipe. By the way, whenever you take this out, there's a little bit of oil in it. It surprised me, but it's just oil blow-by. BMW didn't perfectly solve the issue when they came out with the N55, but supposedly it's better than the N54. However, you will find a little bit of oil in the charge pipe probably. My car has 81,000 miles, so certainly more than you'll find in lower mileage examples, but 81,000 miles for 2011 is pretty good in 2020. So, that being said, there's that. These are a couple screws where I removed the sensor, the airflow sensor. Then there's this spring clamp which actually holds the charge pipe to the throttle body. You will actually reuse this, so I just cleaned it up with some brake clean, and it's good to go again. And here's the new charge pipe. This is the Phoenix Racing, also a Berger Motorsports. It's just a private label product charge pipe, and it's fully aluminum, like I said before. And there's this. There's also the silicone coupler, and then a couple of clamps. Now the silicone coupler, there's obviously one side that's larger than the other, and one clamp is larger than the other. So this will slide on this side, and this will slide on this side. There you go. There's a little bit of hardware to actually get everything installed. Now, what do you need to do this job, right? So, you'll need a T30 drill bit, a T20 drill bit, and I just have a universal screwdriver that I can interchange the bits. You'll need a flathead screwdriver, preferably one that's longer so you can get more leverage. It's to both unscrew some of the clamps in the engine bay, unless you'd rather use a socket, which I would. And you'll also use this to remove the spring clamp from the throttle body. And like I said, sockets, so you'll need a 6mm to move the airbox out of the way, and a 7mm to remove the charge pipe. So, that's all you need. It's a fairly straightforward job. Let's just do it. This is the airbox, which I'm going to move out of the way before we start this process so that I have much more room to access the charge pipe, which is right here. And it just bends around and then goes into the throttle body. So, if you get this out of the way, you'll have a lot more room, especially in the back end where it connects to the throttle body. This front part is actually very accessible, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. But before I do that, let me mention that I have a RaceChip RS tune right here, piggyback tune. I just installed that. The video is also on my YouTube channel, so go find that. Whenever I was learning how to install all of that, I really learned that it's best to avoid unplugging sensors in the engine bay as much as you can. So there is an airflow sensor on the charge pipe, and what I want to try to do is just to unscrew that without actually unplugging the sensor, because I don't want a fault code to appear whenever I turn the car back on later on that says there's any sensor issues, which has happened before. So I'm going to try to leave that connected while just unscrewing it while it's actually in the engine bay. So the first step is just remove your engine cover. Mine is sitting on there pretty loosely, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. Next, there is one of these clamps right here that I want to remove. I'd prefer, in the past I've just had more success using this bottom one rather than this top one. And so you go ahead and grab your flathead screwdriver or a 6mm socket. And now I'm just going to move the airbox to the side. I don't need to disconnect this plug. I'm just going to move it to the side. Okay, so now you can see the whole charge pipe, starting from this clamp down here, all the way up to the throttle body right here. So now, I mean, you won't actually have all these wires hanging around in here. Everything that I'm holding right here is for the race chip RS, so I just need to find a way to tuck that to the side. But really, all you'll have is just a couple of wires from BMW. Alright, so now we're stepping up to a 7mm socket for this clamp down here. I've actually never seen a 7mm socket being used in an engine bay, so this is very interesting. Yeah, that's totally loose now. You don't want to completely undo it. Now you're going to grab just a flathead screwdriver or a trim tool or something and come down to this kind of spring clamp right here and just pry up on it, and it comes off pretty easily. And then finally, you're going to grab your T30 screwdriver or just a drill bit that I have on this universal screwdriver, and you're going to, there's a bolt right down here that's actually holding the charge pipe in place. It's not actually a connector to a different part of the intake system, it's just holding it in place. And that, you know, normally just screws out like a screw. Alright, so now this should just be able to wiggle out of place, so let's do that. That side's out. And that side's out. Alright, here it is. So now I'm going to just grab a screwdriver so that I can undo this connection for this sensor, so that way I don't actually have to unplug it. And here's where that T20 comes in. Now, as you're removing this, do not let it get damaged. Don't let it sit on anything hot if the engine is still warm. I'm doing this with a cold engine. Alright, now that I have everything out of the way, I can just go ahead and clean up any areas that I think need cleaning, because this is the best opportunity to do it. Alright, so I'm going to try connecting this silicone fitting to this pipe that's in here because I have the least amount of clearance whenever I'm actually moving my hands around in this area. And then I will try fitting the rest of this, the silicone fitting, to this bung on the charge pipe. We'll see if that works. It's obviously better if you make a little bit more room for things, but didn't feel like doing that. I wanted to keep it as simple as I could, even if that means that this step takes a little bit longer. So let's just give it a whirl. Okay, it's on. Now I need to figure out if I can get this on in that small area down here. And that is in as well. So now it's all about trying to finagle both of these pieces so that they actually slip onto the OEM pieces on both ends snugly and they sit correctly and all of that. So it's just going to be a matter of twisting and turning and seeing if we can get, oh dang it, I got it off of the bottom one. Let's try this again. I'm not going to film this whole thing because you need to figure it out for yourself as well, but now that I've shown you kind of what to do, you can do it on your own. So I'm just going to take some time to figure it out for myself. Hello. So this is not going as well as I thought it would. It certainly requires a bit more effort, and it's not going to be as easy as just moving those things out of the way to actually be able to access the this pipe down here. So in order to do so, I used that same T20 bit that we were using earlier, and I removed this right here just so I can actually stick my hand down here, I don't know if you can see that, but I can actually try to force this pipe into the silicone coupler. So moving this out of the way. The other issue that I ran into, as you can see, this is loose, and that just uses a 10mm socket, like I mentioned earlier, to remove these two screws, and then you can kind of move this around freely to be out of the way. These pipes ran underneath the original charge pipe, and I'm thinking that this is probably going to have to go over the new charge pipe, just because these hoses are really being kind of clamped against this seam right here, and I don't like that. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I will keep you updated, and once it's all installed, I'll tell you what I did. Okay, so I understand now why people who have the F30 take the tray underneath the car off so that they can access the actual pipe that leads into the charge pipe from the intercooler. Just loosen up the bottom. It's just another spring clamp like this, a C-clamp, whatever you call it. And if you just undo that, it loosens it up a lot more so you can actually move around. So technically you can install the charge pipe without actually doing all that stuff. It just makes it easier. So I understand it. I still, I'm gonna still go with the claim earlier that I made that you can do this without doing that. But it's certainly very challenging. I tried to do it for hours, and it just wasn't budging enough to where I could actually get the coupling, the silicone coupler onto the stock plastic pipe. You might have a better chance if you have smaller hands. I seriously, it's really hard for me to get down in there because I have large hands. It just depends. But that being said, I said earlier that I would possibly have to move this tank right here around the charge pipe so that I could actually get it in there, because it was clamping down on the on these hoses, and I didn't like that. And that is exactly what ended up happening. It doesn't look stock, but I don't think that's what we're going for. I think we're going for an upgraded charge pipe. So yeah, that's that. So then just screw this back down. Oh, well, you just saw it. I just lost that thing and I have to go get it. But anyway, I'm not very happy about it, but I'm choosing to smile. Anyway, so now that that's on, everything is installed. I am a little bit concerned that the connection that the charge pipe has with the throttle body isn't tight enough, but this is my first time doing it, so I'm not the expert. So to get this back where we want it to be, it's really just everything that we've already done, but in reverse. So that kind of makes sense. But you're gonna take this duct that I removed earlier so I could get better visibility right back in there, and then use that T20 to actually secure that back in place. Put the air box back in place, and use a 6mm socket to tighten back that clamp, and then you're good to go. And obviously, what you want to do is turn the car on, make sure that everything is running properly, make sure that there's no abnormal noises, no warning lights or anything like that. I haven't disconnected any sensors, so I shouldn't have any warning lights. But yeah, that being said, this is all in reverse. The reason I'm not putting all this stuff back together right now on video is because I'm about to install a Burger Motorsports air intake. So if you want to see that video, that's also my channel. Click the eye icon. That should be really fun as well. Hopefully, just with the combination of this charge pipe and that air intake, I should get much better airflow into the engine. I'm very excited to see the results and maybe some additional sounds coming from the engine. So very excited for that. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. Have a great day.